Ayala. I go by Bea. I am the head of brand for Threshold.world and B.world, and I am super excited and eager to introduce to you Salvatore Salpietro and Lamont. Salvatore from Fundraise Up and then Lamont from the B.world team, so they can share a bunch of really, really interesting, cool stuff about online donation, storytelling, the merging of the two of them and why it matters. And I'll shut up now and I'll pass the microphone to Dan and Salvatore, who are going to take us through a really interesting conversation. Enjoy. And if you have any questions, please add them on the chat. And if you can, please write on the chat, where are you connecting from? We would love to know where in the world you are. Cheers.
Cool. Bea, thank you for making this possible today, first of all, among many other things that you do here at Threshold and B.world, and also for giving Sal and I a chance to kind of have a conversation with each other, but also with anybody else that's here. My first job of the hour is to talk about why we're here. And I think the why is one that maybe many people feel, which is that we want to see progress happen faster, right? Most of us are in the roles we're in the organizations we're in, whether it's with tech companies or nonprofits or foundations or government or corporate social responsibility, et cetera, because we want to see progress happen faster. And here at Threshold, with our product B.world and through partnerships with folks like Sal and his team at Fundraise Up, we think we can combine 1 + 1 = 3 to try to make that progress happen faster. So hopefully today we'll show you a hypothesis that's real world stuff that we're gonna that's out in the wild today that we're hoping is gonna help some people speed things up and make the world a better place for all of us. So over to you, Sal.
Yeah, awesome. And I think for me, what I am really hoping that we accomplish here today is those in the call. We have a nice intimate group of Dina, Bruno, we have Chris, Megan, Nadia, Philip, Chaz. We want to underline the fact that donors are sensitive, and we have to be very aware of their low threshold, no pun intended, for distraction and abandoning a donation and what pulls them in, right? It's not the same as buying shoes or buying some, freshly ground coffee that's going to be shipped to my house. Making a donation needs emotion, it needs connection, and it needs an experience that's fluid, because it takes very little to derail a donor. So I think that's, for me, kind of what I think is important here, to understand that the story is going to tie them in, and we want to capitalize on that serotonin, that impulse, and that generosity. And this kind of tool is perfect for that. I can't wait to dive into it.
So we should probably tell everybody who we are before we go much further than that, right? Or at least what we do. And so
Sure,
maybe we'll do quick intros and then we'll jump right back in. And so I'll start. I'm Dan Lamont. I am an ocean advocate. I'm a surf bum at heart. And I've had the privilege of kind of working at the intersection of technology and social impact and nonprofits for the last 15 years or so. I live in Puerto Rico, thanks to both my business partner, my boss, and my wife of now 23 years. And I love it here. I adore the culture. I adore the talent that's on the island, and also the ability to build a great business from this location, in addition to the team that Threshold started with in the US and that continues to expand as well. So if you're ever in the area, please reach out. I would love to see you here.
Awesome. My name's Sal. I am with Fundraise Up. I'm currently Chief Community Officer. I say currently because I've had a lot of different roles here, joining Fundraise Up when it started. Fundraise Up really kind of launched in 2018, 2019 to change the game, to revolutionize how giving happens, to up the bar, to raise the bar on what technology needs to deliver to nonprofits if we're going to make a dent in the impact. I'm a newly minted scuba bum, and I've got a daughter, an 8-year-old daughter, Swifty, and work with nonprofits. I'm on the board of Asia Wild and some other things. So I've been on both sides of this, from the nonprofit practitioner side and on the tech side. So really a full view here that we'll be able to dive into.
Cool. So Sal, I think you're going to give us a bit of a primer on the state of online giving in the world, right? We'll kick off with that, and then we'll start talking about some solutions.
Sure. So, we'll keep it brief, and I usually have slides and some data to share on this, but well, I have data and some points, but the state of online giving, the main problem with the nonprofit and the impact space is that there's a delta between what the donor expects when they click that button to give and what they're given, what that experience is. This is over and over and over, and there have been incremental improvements to that, but still, for the massive majority of nonprofits, when I click donate, it is not the experience that I'm getting with my Uber Eats or my Amazon or my Shopify or my Allbirds or whatever, right? On those things, I open my app, I tap, I buy. Very little friction. We're used to things like not having to type my address, autocomplete. We're used to things like Apple Pay and PayPal if I don't have my credit card handy, and so on and so forth. For-profit will go to all lengths to make that that customer experience frictionless, and nonprofits more often than not are going to very few lengths to do the same for for their donors. And that's in part because of the technology, in part because of resources, in part because of the general constraints on nonprofits in that regard. So I was looking at a stat the other day, specifically around mobile giving. Nonprofits tend to not really invest in that channel. Well, it's cost more. We're going to get lower value donors, etc. 75% of the electronic economy in the for-profit world happens on mobile devices, and it has about 25% of the web traffic. Nonprofits are the inverse. We get about 75% on desktop of traffic and about 25% of our revenues coming from there. Why? Why? Is this some desktop passionate base of people that are giving? No. It's that nonprofits are now caught in a self-perpetuating cycle where they're spending ads on desktop because they're getting a higher ROI because their tech on the mobile experience is poor. Short answer, that's the hard truth, right? And when we flip that and we make that experience on par with the e-commerce and the for-profit world, those numbers flip again. So looking at the Fundraise Up data, 55% of all donations across our ecosystem come on mobile, double the average of the space, because we're throwing things in there like Apple Pay, Google Pay, PayPal, Venmo, autocomplete my address, make it look like it's mobile first, not mobile responsive, but mobile optimized, right? A different experience for a mobile donor. When you do that, you now start attracting new demographics, new revenue sources, and so on. So that is a high level of the state of online giving for nonprofits. There's just a chasm. I won't even say a delta. There is a gap between where expectation is, which is set by the for-profit space, and where nonprofits are meeting their donors. And we can close that gap. The technology is now becoming available. There are more solutions on the market that are focusing on improving that. And as nonprofits, we need to be able to embrace them and take them on and reap the benefits, not be afraid of it. I think that's a common speaking point these days at conferences and so on, is take risks, take change, embrace change, innovate, and advance. So that's my I guess elevator or high level view of the state of online giving in the impact world. Dan, where does B World come in? Why today? Why Fundraise Up inside of it as a donor experience while they're reading a story and participating in this emotion? What's the deal? Give us a scoop.
Yeah. Well, you gave me like 4 product ideas while you were talking, so thanks. Appreciate that. And I know our product manager and head of design and first team member at Threshold, Adina's here, so she'll probably yell at me after the call, but I appreciate it nonetheless. I think at the core of it is it goes back to the point you mentioned earlier, Sal, which is that the experience has to be human, right? And the top 3 things that nonprofits can do to increase fundraising are: 1, build better relationships with donors, which everybody knows. Those relationships need to be based on trust. They need to be based on personalized communication. They need to be based on more regular communication. The second thing they can do is to leverage storytelling, like in the formulaic sense, as people and humans have been doing since the dawn of our time, so that we can make progress. That's why we are where we are as humanity. The good, the bad, and otherwise, is because we've been able to tell stories and learn from them. And the last is optimize that mobile and online presence, right? And then there's a bunch after that, but those are the 3 things that people can do. So what we saw in the partnership between Beat Out World and Fundraise Up was, first, we were doing work in our consulting team, and the customers we worked with just loved Fundraise Up. Why? Easy to implement, great financial and business model, excellent customer relationships and service, and shared vision and mission, among other things. So our team, who was doing work with your team, was like, this stuff is awesome. And we've worked with lots of donation platforms over the last 15 years with organizations that have raised, hundreds of millions of dollars online, all the way down to just getting started. And so our team was like, you need to look at this, and we need to think about connecting this to our storytelling and impact measurement app. And so, I think if we think about getting to the real reason behind it, is that why does Beat Out World exist? And we haven't done the pitch on that, so let me talk about what's the hypothesis behind Beat Out World. The people that are working in cause-based organizations are identifying issues, right? Either alone or with partners, imagining solutions. And then again, alone or with partners, going off and doing the work and implementing and measuring the results quantitatively, doing project management, all that hard stuff. And then they're trying to communicate about what happened, right? And the way they do that technologically today, overwhelmingly, is PowerPoint, Excel, some email app, right? Which then maybe connects to an online donation form. So they're making like 4 hops between 4 different systems to try to actually make that loop happen. And the email thing will hopefully get into email boxes, or maybe drive people to social, which will then get them to a link, and then hopefully get them to a place like Fundraise Up where they can actually show their support. But that whole cycle is really delayed, right? There's a lot of people involved. Most organizations don't have their own communications team. Most organizations don't have, PhDs or master's degree folks that have done, monitoring and evaluation. And they're operating under harsh circumstances and doing the very best they can. They are, in our minds, they are heroes, right? They make great sacrifices to try to do things to support all of us and other species that are lucky enough to call this planet home. So Beat Out World's intent is to try to collapse that process into an app that's easy to use, that's price accessible, and that AI can really facilitate the learning process. And it basically goes something like, there's a problem, imagine a solution, let AI help you ideate, implement, measure the results, and then tell stories. But instead of just waiting for the very end to tell a story, the idea is that you should be able to tell a contextual story all along the way, even if you're seeking funding, right? We tell stories, organizations tell stories when they're seeking funding, and then all the way throughout the life cycle. And so every time you tell a story is an opportunity to demonstrate your progress, your learning, maybe even your failures, in a trustworthy and authentic way, to build relationships. And that is the perfect time to offer people an opportunity to support your mission financially, right? In addition to other methods like volunteerism and so forth. So we handle that journey of doing the work, and you all do a brilliant job of seamlessly and effortlessly and very authentically and in a very trusting way provide that opportunity to provide financial support. And so it was just a very natural thing for us to do, I think, to offer the ability to put those 2 things together, so that anybody who's imagining the work, doing the work, trying to tell more and better stories, that drive serotonin, dopamine, and all of the things that make humans, have an affinity towards things and act. It just shows up, and we'll show everybody what that looks like in a little bit. So
I think nonprofits can, do even better on the storytelling part too. I mean,
yeah,
I'll get an email sometimes that'll say, we saved this many elephants, or we did this many. But if you tell me a story about Lucy the elephant,
yeah,
and what happened, I am so much more there. And I think that's the same thing, right? That's human nature. There's probably some effect or some psychological name for it that I'm too ignorant to know at this point. But when we hear about 10,000 humans were impacted by this tragedy,
mm-hmm.
it's much less impactful than this child had this happen. Right. Talking about the one as opposed to the large numbers, which becomes
mm-hmm.
a blur. And I think with B World, if it's used correctly, you can tell the story about the one. You can tell the story about it. I want to dive into it. Can you show it to us?
Yeah, I would love to.
Are we there?
And I will do that right now. And I will ask that this is the first time we're doing a webinar of showing this. It's been live for a couple of weeks now. But if you see anything that you like or don't like, please feel free to share with us here publicly or otherwise. Sal and I both are fortunate to be part of teams that we don't have ego in this, except in that we want to do a good job to serve the sector and do well at the same time. So please don't feel like you're going to hurt our feelings if you say something out loud here. And obviously you can follow up with us after. So we're talking about stories. So I think it's only fair that we do this in the context of a story. We have a team member named Jack Crawford who is exceptionally proud of his brother who just graduated from law school. And his brother's going to go off and work with an organization called Geneva Call for a little while. And so this, full disclaimer, this is not a customer, right? It may be a customer one day. We're not even talking with them, but we just want to use this as an organization that we admire and that one of our team members who actually built the technology has a certain affinity for. And part of the reason why I'm doing that also is because it'll demonstrate the way this actually shows up inside the application. So this is a longer page, but the core of this is that Geneva Call is engaging with a bunch of other partners to try to help people that live and or are involved in conflict zones, in this case, the Philippines, follow rules that improve the humanitarian situation. Right. And so it's kind of a really interesting but sort of complex case where for a long period of time, they've actually been out there trying to reach tens of thousands of people to help them understand what's in the Geneva Convention. Right. They're not trying to get people to stop the conflict. They recognize that's exceptionally difficult to do. But what they're trying to do is reduce the humanitarian burden that's happening as a result of the conflict through educating, in many cases, the combatants as well as the communities around them, which, if you think about it, it's kind of a hard thing to tell stories about. And it's maybe even a hard thing to get people to write a check for, right? Or click the donate button because it seems a little bit nebulous. But let's use this tough example in the context of this showcase so we can see what actually it might look like. So this is what you see in B.World if you were to come in to the app and you were using it. These are all of your projects that you're working on. And I'm going to jump straight to the one that we're talking about in the context of Geneva Call. And if you get into that project, there's lots of information about the project. And so the first two components are really about what's the project, when is it happening, why are you doing it, where are you doing the work, and then who are the people, organizational, and entity-based stakeholders that you're engaging. So all the W questions. You can also generate these kinds of projects with AI as well. So we'll cover that in other webinars and so forth. The second big part about programs and projects is you have to try to design and adapt as they evolve. And so in the B.World context, you have this ability to use the digital whiteboard to design the way that you're going to accomplish that work, or at least your hypothesis for how that's going to happen. And you can do that as a team, just like as if you would in a digital whiteboard. So you have an impact level goal, interim level objectives, all the yellow boxes are indicators. This was generated with AI as well. So then you've got this framework that's a great communication tool for how you are trying to bring about the change.
What
And
is
then I'll just jump.
the AI,
Yeah.
Dan? What does it pull from to generate? Is it just a brief or some content?
It's using the context of the project itself that you've
Cool.
given it. And in the future, we'll add more and more detail to that so that it has additional context. And our bigger vision on that is that on an opt-in basis only, people could actually share what's worked for them. And then that content could be used to actually generate and share those kind of what works frameworks with the other practitioners in the market. Ultimately disintermediating us and other people, in the process, so that the people who are doing the work can actually find each other. So the last part I'll show you just as a build up here is the data, right? And so you've seen some visuals in the app, you've seen some text in the app, and then obviously the quantifiable outputs of the projects and programs are really important. So B.World also brings that data together, and it shows things like baseline and target for progress and so forth. So effectively, the app is intended to help you collect and more easily generate using things like AI. For example, what I'm showing on the screen now is like an AI generated summary of the indicator definition and the outputs, so that you can actually get assistance in interpreting the data. But then you can take all of that and get to the thing that is really what we've worked on together, which is telling the stories, right? So within B.World, all of that narrative content, the visual content, the data content becomes accessible from a storytelling perspective. And we have 6 different types of stories that help you tell a story arc about things like the challenge that you're trying to overcome, or a challenge you're facing, or maybe a change in a participant's life, which could be a grove of trees, it could be a coral reef, or obviously it could, if you have consent, it could be a real human being as well. And again, you can draft those with AI. And just to fast forward this a bit, I'm going to show you one that we created earlier for demo purposes, which is this sort of summary of this program from Geneva Call about trying to transform conflict zones. And so the story builder has visuals like this background image. It has things like the maps and charts that come together with the narrative and the text. And you can also do things like embedding videos and so forth. And ultimately, you can publish this, which I'll show you in just a moment. But also with the work that we've done together, you can now very easily add the Fundraise Up donation experience right inside of the actual story itself that you're going to publish. And you can do that in a variety of different formats. So all you have to do is click the Fundraise Up button. Thanks to Sal and his team, it was very easy for us to create this integration. And you can see here a couple of different types of experiences that will actually result in. And so this is what it looks like if I preview the story and then I actually click it and I say, like, I want to make a $250 donation. I can click donate and support. And now you're actually seeing the user doesn't know this, but you're actually experiencing the Fundraise Up standard online experience that you have configuration dominion over inside of your Fundraise Up account over here. So really all you need for this is the B.World subscription and your Fundraise Up account, and you can embed these elements right inside of your stories. And then without anything else, when you publish stories, you're going to get all of that experience that Fundraise Up delivers right inside of the application. And so if I publish this, just for argument's sake, to show you what a finished product might look like, and to go back to kind of Sal's key point earlier about the mobile experience, B.World then gives you that kind of mobile responsive front end with that embedded Fundraise Up experience. And as Fundraise Up continues to evolve the application and introduce more artificial intelligence, better capabilities, et cetera, we'll just inherit those, and you won't have to worry about any of that integration expense, et cetera. So really, from imagining the problem to creating stories all along the way and offering an opportunity for financial support, the integration works seamlessly for folks.
So I love that you're able to build out the story. It feels like not an annual report. It feels like it's a day-to-day, by-the-minute report on impact and data and things like that. I think there could be some innovation there for nonprofits to how they communicate with nonprofits, with their constituents. And that you can make the GIF right there. And I click it and I'm in the story, and the story is still behind my transaction and my donation experience, and I'm not disconnected from that emotion. It's in the moment. Now I'm not, presumptuous to the point where I'll say, everyone here has Fundraise Up. If I don't have Fundraise Up and I want to allow people to use B.World to make a donation, how does that happen? I know from the data that we've done and some research that, when you open new tabs and you move through different pages, you have about a 10% drop off in donors in conversion rates. But that aside, for the nonprofits that are with us that are not using Fundraise Up, how can they still leverage that and still deliver a better experience?
Sure. Yeah, we have one of the things that you can drop onto a story in any one of those question blocks is a button that jumps out to somewhere else. You can name the button and you just give it a URL where you want it to go. So it could be that as you're saying, like maybe they have a different online fundraising platform. Maybe you want to send people to a more detailed annual report. Maybe you're actually seeking volunteerism that will then lead to a potential solicitation online or some other step in a journey that you want them to take. So that button is kind of the universal option that people can have, and you can add that to any one of the story blocks that you choose to publish inside the story. So the Fundraise Up capability is specific to the integration, and then the button capability lets you call out to any other property that you want to send people to.
Got it. Awesome. That's good. So anybody here, regardless of what they're using, B.World, it can help them build out their stories and tell that story in a concise way and still give the opportunity to give, with what they have. I have on our notes here that we want to talk about, data and how it matters in the context of fundraising and stories. I mean, that's a blue sky question. I feel like that you can go anywhere with it. I think some of I've been, in prep for this and how I've left some comments that, stories are better than data. I was thinking about this more this morning. I think that we can add to that in a direct to consumer or donor capacity, obviously, right? If it's B2B, you want to be talking about data and case studies and points and impact, et cetera. But when you're getting to a human one-on-one level, which is what we're doing with the story, you're trying to say, hey, this is my brand and I'm talking to you and I want to tell you something. I want to tell you a story. Does data still have a role here? How does it shape the storytelling? How important is it? And we can take this into the direction where, data around fundraising. We shared some data at the top of our conversation around mobile and so on. But particularly with when you're building out your stories, I know it's got a big component in B.World about tying in external data.
Yeah. I think it's the short answer is I think it plays a critical role. Like the best combo is data, meaning like the quantifiable data, something visual and something narrative. Like that is the combo. If you go look at any of the research on this, which is voluminous, right? Way more than I think any of us thought when we thought we had a great idea coming up with this in the beginning. When you actually go back and you look at the research from social psychologists, et cetera, that's the combo. Like that's what works in every instance is something visual, something narrative, and something that demonstrates proof, right? Which we're kind of using the word data as shorthand for. And so when you combine those three elements, you get the best result. Like, you have the highest incidence of learning and you also have the highest incidence of memorability. Right. And those are the things that drive people to increase affinity and maybe donate. And so if you're using B.World to collect the data, right, and summarize the data, you don't have to be a pivot table wizard or send it off to a designer to generate a chart. You just pull the chart into the block, right? And that could be outputs from an individual project. It could be across your whole portfolio, like effectively for your annual report for a donor, or if it's a funder that you need to update on a quarterly basis, you can just pull that data. So if we think about the life cycle, like why does this matter? Like I think if we think about the life cycle that most organizations that we come across go through today, they have somebody who needs to produce a report, who's reaching out to somebody who's doing the work, who is scrambling to get the data together because it's really hard, not because of any act of omission or apathy on their part. It's just really hard to get that stuff together, especially when you're relying on other people to bring it to you. We see that with impact investors in their portfolio companies. We see it with large affiliated nonprofits. We see it with small nonprofits trying to get the summer camp results back, right, from the counselors.
Sure.
About the number of people that showed up. It's just tough to collect the data. So the idea is if we can reduce the data collection and visualization burden by just doing that for people, and then make it really easy to embed that into a story, and make it possible for people to tell stories whenever they want to and whenever they need to, as opposed to waiting till the end, then it gives them so many more opportunities to put that information out there, to demonstrate the efficacy of their mission, demonstrate the learning, and ask for support appropriately in that context. So I think the key assumptions into that are, you still have to do the hard work of getting the data together. Like, there's no silver bullet for that. The AI features that we've added, I think, are really helpful as an assistant, but at the end of the day, you still have to find ways to collect that data, because so much of the work we do it's not instrumented, right? It's not like knowing where all of your trucks are for delivery like Amazon. It's not that simple. Like, a lot of the work that we're talking about is human. There's human engagement, and often it's not appropriate or safe to use technology in those contexts, right? So you still have to collect the data, but once you have the data together, it becomes easily surfaceable in the context of the story. And so I think that's the why this matters, is it connects those two things, and it also hits that really important point, which is, we have known, all of us social scientists have known for a very long time how to communicate, how to help people learn, and everybody does that in their own way. And so instead of just trying to collect the story, the big story at the end, the incremental stories build trust along the way. And now you have a great call to action to ask for that support in the context of that with the work we've done together.
I feel like maybe some that are listening and with us today are kind of like, wait, these guys are saying data is important, but you're telling me stories are important. You're saying data, don't speak to me in data, speak to me in stories. Like, I feel like there's a conflict that might happen because it popped up in my head. But where I resolve this is, the data gives the story credibility, right? You need to start with that and construct the story from it. Otherwise, you're a fiction writer, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is Harry Potter, right? There's no data behind Harry Potter, right? But something else that has some facts behind it, we can build a story that's credible. I mean, storytelling is so important. There's a conference for it. There is the Nonprofit Storytellers Conference, and it's people for days talking about storytelling and how do we do this. But I've never seen a tool that says, well, let's build a story in a tool. I don't think anybody's ever done that. So while there's no silver bullet for doing the legwork, you got a silver bullet for building the story, which is really cool. It brings it back to emotion. At Fundraise Up, in our checkout, in the process there, you'll see little Easter eggs or things that seem ridiculous, like a beating heart that might be an icon, or a little thing somewhere. Those are not just a designer going, I like hearts, I'm putting hearts everywhere, right? It's not. We say, someone has an idea, they say, I want to put a heart. We say, great, A/B test it, run some analysis, show me the impact it's going to have on a nonprofit. So, we know when we added the little heart to the monthly button, we saw monthly giving go up by something like 37% on those that were engaging with that, and so on and so forth. When we have it on the beating heart for the donate button that I saw in the example, twice as many people click it than just the word donate. It's just a simple draw the eye, make me go, oh, that's cute, right?
And look at that.
If you get me to say that, I click.
That's a perfect example. It's like the something visual is the thing that made the difference, right? Like, you're adding visual plus the text plus a call to action. And the same is true in the rest of the story, is like, then add the data, then add the visual. Like, that's how our brains, we're all wired different. We're all individuals, but that is one of the universal things about humans, is that the combo of those things gets us to light up in ways that we don't otherwise. And I think we've tried to, everything that we've done in Beat Out World is a reflection of what we've learned from just listening to people in the sector. And so I just want to be really clear, like, these ideas came from trying to help close those gaps. We had some good ideas about design along the way. We had good ideas about how to make it safe and secure and sustainable by building on Microsoft and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's really a reflection of what we've been hearing from the market, which is this is really tough to go from this person who's designing the program to this person who's implementing, collecting data, to this person who's doing aggregation of results, to this person who's in communications, to the other person in fundraising, who's putting the campaign page together. And you lose so much time in all of that, right? And you lose the contextuality across all those different hops. And so I think at the core of what we're trying to do together is program team members are some of the best fundraisers. They're the ones that get on stage to tell the real stories, that get people to lift up their paddle at the gala, right? Or often it's the executive director who's come from doing the work that is the most authentic representative of the mission. Chad Nelson from the Surfrider Foundation is a brilliant storyteller, just did a TEDx talk about grassroots fundraising and why grassroots programs work. And it's because he started out as a lifeguard, and then learned about kelp and became a scientist, and now he's the head of the Surfrider Foundation, and he can tell an authentic story backed by data, and he doesn't feel bad asking for support, right? And it's made their organization all the better for it. So I think with humility, you and I are working with our teams to try to make it easier for fundraisers and program teams to collaborate in service of the shared mission and the stakeholders that they're trying to wake up for every day. And that's really an honor, right, to be able to do that. And I think that we'll keep trying to chip away at that challenge and make it easier for them to share the mission, get support for it, so they can do more of the mission and continue learning from that process.
Amazing. I love it. I love where this is heading. I love that we are working to level up the nonprofit space. Bea, I want to do a time check. Do we want to ask questions?